Welcome back to the Old Bald Guy's Shop. This is Making End Tables episode 2. And the first episode, we got all the pieces cut and we made the tops. So we'll give you a good close-up of this. We put some inlay in there. The center part is mahogany. The outside part is birch with some color in it. That's what my daughter chose. It's her project. So in this episode, we're going to hopefully finish this project. And I have cut down my glue board here. This is just a piece of plywood covered with painter's tape, and I use that for assembly. So I have the pieces to cut for the sides, for the backs, and for the drawer fronts. This will have a drawer in it. So now I have to cut these pieces, and the only difference really between what we're doing here and what we did on the tops is that the pocket hole screws will be cut into the mahogany rather than the birch, and that's because there are some additional pocket hole screws that will be used to attach these panels to the legs and to the top of the cabinet. All the sides are done now. It took us 4 days. We did one a day, and those are done. Next week we do the fronts and backs, and then we get to work on the legs and start assembly. All right, we've finished all of the panels. We've cut the legs to length. These legs are going to have a taper on them, the last 5 or 6 inches at the bottom. So now I've got to build a tapering jig. I've cut myself a piece of Baltic birch plywood. I like working with the Baltic birch because it's much more stable than anything else. And we're going to use that for the base for our jig. I've got to cut some slots for some T-track, and then we'll build the rest of the jig. Okay, we got our slots cut. Had to cut the center one with the table saw because it didn't have enough reach on my router table. I'm going to put just a little bit of epoxy in these slots. We are going to put some screws in there, but there's not much for them to hold to, and we'll have to sand off the back side of the screws. So we'll put a little epoxy in there just to make sure that those don't ever pop loose. Okay, so this is a basic setup of how the tapering jig is going to work. It'll pivot on the front. There'll be a stop that'll stick out here. And this has to move, be able to move back here, which changes the geometry of the hole that's going to be attached to this T-track. Same thing for in the middle. So I'm going to make a slotted hole back here and a slotted hole here to allow for that change in geometry as this is moved anywhere on the board for the proper taper. And I don't have a 1/4 inch bit for my router that's deep enough to go all the way through this, so I'm going to make that a 1/2 inch hole, and I'm going to put some nylon bushings in there inside that'll hold the screw. I got to drill a 3/8 hole in the end of this piece, and can't fit that in my drill press, so I used a drill press to make a 3/8 hole and a piece of scrap. I'll put the bit in there. I've got a starter hole here already, and that will help me keep this flush. Tighten that down a little more, it wants to move. Now I got to put in a threaded insert in there that will accommodate a 1/4 inch screw. Now we can assemble our tapering jig. Put our spacers in. Now we can set our taper where we want it. We'll put one more piece on the end. This is our toe stop. And that will accommodate the end of the leg. Set the leg in there, pull it out to the proper depth of the start of the cut. Set it for the amount of taper that we want back here, how far we want it back to cut, and then we can run it through the table saw. And I've marked for the holes for my toggle clamps. Get those drilled. Perfect. Now we can cut some tapers. Eight legs, all tapered, sanded, and ready to be installed. And I think tomorrow we'll start installation. Okay, we've sanded our legs, everything's ready. We are going to assemble today. So we have drilled pocket hole screws, drilled for our pocket hole screws in the back of the side. And so we're going to set this side in here. I used a piece of melamine. I took the advice of one of the folks who watches my videos. I'm going to use melamine for our clamp up. I put a little piece on the back so that we can tighten up these clamps, pull this tight up against there slide the legs up tight against there, and that way we'll get a flush fit against the top when we put the top on. I want to go kind of light on my glue, but I don't want a dry joint. But I don't want a whole lot of squeeze out to clean up either. This is where having an extra pair of hands really comes in handy. Mm-hmm. Slides in there, lays flat. Okay. Put that leg in there. Pressure on it. Then we put spacers underneath this so that we have a 1/4 inch of reveal on the front, on the face of it from the leg. And so we're going to clamp that down just to make sure that that reveal stays 1/4 inch all the way around. Is that tied up against the board there? That
Yes.
leg?
Yeah.
And tied up against the board over here.
Against the board there.
Okay, all right. We'll tighten these up just to keep everything square. So there is a glued up leg, side assembly. We have a 1/4 inch of reveal. And I just managed to do this without any squeeze out. Perfect. Less work for me sanding. Time to install the back against the legs. So we've done a test clamp. We've got it kind of temporarily set up here. We're going to lift those pieces out. And we'll put glue on the sides. Now let's get these clamped down to make sure we have our reveal. These are the face frame pieces that will eventually go in there, but for now, they're just keeping it flush.
Okay. Okay. Square. Yeah.
So we are ready to put the face frame into the front. Now this cabinet is going to have a drawer in it, and this is the back side of the drawer front. It's an inset drawer front with 1/16 of an inch of clearance. If I can get close enough here, you'll see that we put a shim in between the drawer front and the leg. Same thing at the bottom between the drawer front and the face frame, and also at the top. We're going to use those shims just to maintain the space while we glue in the drawer front, the face frame pieces, and pocket hole screw them in place. We'll lift these two pieces out. Now we'll get our spreader clamp.
I need one on my end too, right?
Yep. So we're just going to make some space with a spreader clamp. Leave ourselves enough room to work here. Okay, so that's spread out against the clamps here.
Better the other way, can you?
Oh, I knocked my shim over. Okay, quick like a bunny. So we're just making some glide supports for the drawer glides. Just going to be a little simple L bracket out of some pieces of birch. This little bracket will furrow out the inside dimension of the cabinet to where the legs are, and then there'll be a 1/2 inch piece underneath sticking out. To set the glides on makes it just a whole lot easier to install the glides when it comes time to do that. We can get everything perfectly square. Move your thumb. Wouldn't want a nail to come flying up out of there and bite you. Been there, done that. So I've installed the drawer glide supports. We put those in here so that they're perfectly perpendicular to the front leg on both sides. So that gives us a mount to support the glide, and that just greatly simplifies the installation process of the glides, it's very important that we have this perfectly perpendicular so that this drawer front, being an inset drawer, will set up perfectly into this space. I don't have the lumber yet today for the drawers, so I'm going to get a little prep work here and get the holes drilled for the glides to go in on my glide supports. This is a soft close glide, so I'm gonna, and I've already taken the inside piece out, so I'm gonna trip this soft close glide so that it'll go in all the way. And I like to set my soft close glides about 1/8 of an inch beyond where the drawer front is going to go. So I've set my square for that distance. Get that positioned, and then I can slide this out. Stick a clamp on there to keep it in place. Got a self-centering punch here. Find that first hole, put my punch in there and give it a smack. Then I can drill those holes, be ready to install the glides. I put a little piece of tape on my bit to serve as a depth stop. Well, I went to the hardwood center this morning to get birch to make the drawers for these end tables, but they were really low on birch and I couldn't get enough to piece together to make the drawers. So I'm going to make the drawers out of poplar. They had a 14-inch wide, 10-foot long board. I'm going to have to cut this down to 12.5. My drawer is going to be 12 inches high, so I won't have to piece anything together, but I do have to cut this down and then plane everything to 1/2 inch. I'm getting ready to cut box joints, and I'm going to use a dovetail machine to do that. For those of you who have not done this, I'm using a plunge router, and this plunge router requires an adapter to be able to hold the guide bushing. Get that snapped into place. Our guide bushing goes inside, so it sits up flush with the bottom. Finger tight. And for box joints, I use Bosch bits because they are exactly 500 thousandths of an inch in diameter. Some other brands that I've used were a few thousandths off, and if you're using a bit that's even 497 thousandths, the box joint is going to be so tight you won't be able to assemble it. And the Bosch is the one brand that I have found that is consistently exactly 500 thousandths on their 1/2 inch straight bit. So we want to set this to just a hair over the depth of the piece of wood that we're going to use, and there's a utility here. On the bottom of the dovetail machine that allows us to set this bit. You can adjust the depth of that little stop down there, so you can push the bit down until it makes contact, then lock it in place. I'll set the stop on here and tighten it up so that I can repeat that easily if I have to release the router for any reason. I'm going to clamp a test piece in here. Make sure that it's up against the stop all the way, and all the way up against the guide at the top. Tighten it down good and tight, make sure it's not going to move. Fixed up my own dust hood to put on here to catch my dust. And we have about 4 to 8 thousandths of an inch of the pin sticking through, and that's just about perfect. We'll want to sand a little bit off, but not too much, so that we maintain the fit into the glides when the drawer is finished. So we'll go ahead and cut them all now. So we've cut all our box joints. We've done a test fit on one of the boxes. Now we have to cut a slot inside all the way around to accommodate the bottom of the box. And so I just make a few marks here so that I don't inadvertently make one of those cuts on the wrong side of the piece. So we've set up our router table with a 1/2 inch bit. Because plywood is never exactly a 1/2 inch, the plywood that I'm using here is 468 thousandths, even though it's 1/2 inch plywood. So I picked out an old bit that's been sharpened. I sent out for sharpening, and when you sharpen them, it changes the dimension. So I found one that was about 480 thousandths. So that'll give me 20 thousandths of play in here in the bottom, and that'll make assembly a little bit easier. We cut an 1/8 of an inch deep slot all the way around, and then slide all that together, and that bottom will never come out. So with the slots cut in all of these pieces, you can see here that I did not cut that slot all the way through. Stop short a little bit so that you don't have a slot showing at the end of your box joint. And now I'm going to pre-assemble and measure the inside measurement when it's all clamped up together, and then just because I cut these slots exactly an 1/8 of an inch deep, I can simply add a 1/4 inch to the inside measurement all the way around, and that's the size that I will cut my side. All right, I've cut the drawer bottom to the right dimension. Now I'm just going to bevel the edge of it just ever so slightly with sandpaper so that it fits together more easily and doesn't catch and try to peel up a piece of the plywood. Do that top and bottom. Okay, we got our drawer all assembled and sanded. We have one last task to do before we do the final sanding and get it lacquered. And that is to put a round over both inside and outside, everywhere except where the space the drawer front is going to be attached. And we'll do that with a 3/16 round over bit on the router table. Yesterday I pre-drilled the drawer fronts for the hardware that my daughter selected. Put a couple of coats of lacquer on the drawer fronts, put a couple of coats of lacquer on the drawers, and pre-drilled the drawers inside to be able to attach the drawer fronts to them once they're in the cabinet. So now I'm going to install the glides, and then we'll be ready to start fitting things into the cabinet. Everybody has their own way of installing glides. I like to set my glides right at the bottom of the cabinet and at the bottom of the drawer, but there has to be a little clearance under the drawer, so I use a couple of 1/8" spacers that I set under the drawer while I install the glides, setting flat on the workbench. We line this up with the front of the cabinet, or the front of the drawer, pardon me. I use my centering punch. Drill a hole. These glides come with a 5/8 screw. I'm using 1/2" stock for my drawers. So a 5/8" screw sticks through a little bit, so I use 1/2" screws to install them. And I'll do the rest of the holes. So I have the drawers installed, but we have a little issue here. The reveal right here is not even with the reveal over here in and out. Vertically it's fine, but my finger catches there and my finger catches here. So we need to adjust the back end of that drawer over to the right a little bit. There is some play, so I'm going to show you how we're going to fix that. So, because we need to move that back end of that glide over, we're going to bend the tabs. We still want our mounting point to be flush with the front, so we'll put a little flat file over there. Bend that tab back so that it's flat. This one will get a little less because it's farther down. So we'll bend that tab back in a little. And then the third tab, and we won't do anything with the front tab. It will stay stationary. And this will take up some of the slop and that's inherent in the system, and it'll move that glide over and hopefully straighten up the front. We have our reveal all set now. We've put our Our shim's in place, it's sitting on one, so that we have a 1/16 of an inch reveal all the way around. And everything's clamped in place. Now we're going to put the screws in back here in behind to screw the drawer itself to the drawer front. Looks good. Proper reveal all the way around. Okay, we have a proper drawer fit on this, and the drawer front fits properly. We were able to adjust that glide in the back, so we have a nice even reveal all the way around. And that drawer is complete. Okay, we have the drawers all set. The next step is to set the top on the base. So we're centering up how we look, Randy.
Good. I got these. I didn't check the back one yet.
Okay. And that's the same on both sides?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have the equal reveal all the way around. We're going to put some tape on these blocks, and we're going to clamp them in place against the leg on each side. We'll just snug it. These little blocks will allow us, after we lift this top off and put glue all around the perimeter of it on the top, will allow us to just set it right back in place without smearing glue all over creation. And the tape will just ensure that we don't have any glue sticking to this block if there's any squeeze out. All right, let's just lift it off, flip it over. In the blocks,
In the black.
yeah, that side looks good.
Yeah.
All right, that one's done. Yeah, let's flip this over and set it over here on the saw table. There's just a little bit of finish sanding to do, so I've taped up the glides to keep the dust out of them, and that'll also keep the lacquer out of them when we lacquer it. Fine sanding is all done, and I've turned my shop into a paint booth, covered things up that I didn't want lacquer dust on. I have an old TV turntable that I use as my painting turntable. Where I can turn my piece and don't have to walk all around it when I'm spraying. So it's time for lacquer. Well, our project is finally complete. We have 4 coats of lacquer. We have a 23-inch drawer. So join us next time in the Old Bald Guy's shop.